Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to trace the absolutely incredible, high-speed biological journey of a single touch, watching step by step as it transforms into an electrical signal that just races through your body. If you've ever wondered how your nervous system pulls off this lightning-fast communication, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to break down the exact microscopic mechanisms that make human sensation possible. So let's jump right in with the ultimate question. How does a simple, everyday physical touch actually become a full-blown electrical storm in your nervous system? How does your body manage to communicate across such ridiculously long distances, like from your big toe all the way up to your brain, in mere milliseconds? Well, it all comes down to a perfectly choreographed sequence of events, strict chemical gradients, and some really rapid-fire cellular machinery.
All right, here's our game plan for today. We'll kick things off by sensing the physical world, check out how the neuron maintains its resting state, see how it actually fires the action potential, watch it cross the synaptic gap, and finally, look at how the body controls all these signals.
Okay, step 1. Sensing the physical world, featuring the Pacinian corpuscle. Before electricity can travel anywhere, a physical event actually has to be translated into a biological language. And that crucial translation, it happens thanks to a really fascinating structure called the Pacinian corpuscle. It's a specific sensory receptor buried deep in your skin, and honestly, it's kind of like a tiny microscopic onion. It's made of these concentric layers, or rings, known as lamellae. It doesn't care if it's hot, cold, or bright outside, it specifically responds to mechanical pressure. It is literally our starting line. So imagine you press on your skin. That physical pressure literally squishes and deforms those layered lamellae. As they warp out of shape, they physically pull open these special microscopic gates called stretch-mediated sodium channels. Now, because there is just a ton of sodium hanging out outside the cell, those positively charged sodium ions rush right in through the widened channels. Boom! That sudden influx of positive charge creates what we call a generator potential. Just like that, a physical push has become a chemical shift. Which brings us to phase 2, maintaining the resting state, or as I like to call it, building the biological battery. Because before that newly minted signal can travel down the axon highway, we really need to understand the resting tension of the neuron itself. Picture the neuron at rest. It is highly, heavily polarized. Inside the neuron, it's negatively charged and absolutely packed with potassium ions. Meanwhile, the outside environment is positively charged and completely loaded with sodium ions. The neuron is basically functioning as a fully charged biological battery, keeping those charges strictly separated and hoarding all this potential energy just waiting to be unleashed. The magic baseline number you need to remember here is minus 70 millivolts. Thanks to that uneven distribution of ions and a bunch of large trapped negative ions inside the cell, the resting potential sits perfectly at minus 70. It's primed, polarized, and totally ready to fire. But how does it stay at minus 70 without the charge just slowly leaking away? Enter the sodium-potassium pump. Think of this thing as a tireless biological bouncer at a VIP club. It's constantly burning cellular energy, ATP, to physically kick 3 sodium ions out for every 2 potassium ions it lets back in. By constantly tossing out more positive charge than it takes in, it flawlessly maintains that negative 70 millivolt resting state. All right, part 3, firing the action potential. Time to ride the electrical wave. We've got our tension set, so what happens when that generator potential from our skin touch is actually strong enough? We get a full-blown nerve impulse. Now, here's the catch. Not every tiny little breeze or light touch triggers a full signal. To fire off an action potential, that rush of sodium from our touch receptor has to push the internal charge from minus 70 all the way up to a critical threshold potential, which is minus 55 millivolts. If the stimulus is weak and doesn't hit minus 55, literally nothing happens. But if it does cross that line, it triggers an absolute biological avalanche. The split second we hit minus 55 millivolts, voltage-gated sodium channels all along the membrane throw their doors wide open. Sodium just floods into the cell. This super rapid depolarization shoots the internal electrical charge all the way up to positive 40 millivolts. That right there is the absolute peak electrical firing of the action potential. To put it into perspective, we're basically riding a wave. First, depolarization. Sodium doors open, positive ions rush in, and the charge spikes to plus 40. But we can't stay there forever, right? Next is repolarization. The sodium doors slam shut and potassium channels open up so positive potassium can rush out, bringing the charge back down.
Actually, so much leaves that we hit hyperpolarization, a brief overshoot where the charge dips even lower than -70. Finally, our trusty biological bouncers, the pumps, work overtime to restore that perfect resting balance. Moving on to section 4, crossing the synaptic gap. Our electrical signal is zooming down the axon, but suddenly it hits a massive roadblock. Neurons don't actually physically touch each other. There's a gap called the cholinergic synapse. So how does an electrical wave jump a gap?
This is where it gets incredibly elegant. The electrical signal basically takes a chemical ferry. When the action potential reaches the very end of the first neuron, it forces voltage-gated calcium channels to open. Calcium rushes in, acting like a messenger that tells tiny bubbles, vesicles, to fuse with the cell edge and dump a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, or ACH, into the gap. That chemical floats right across the synaptic cleft, locks onto specific receptors on the second neuron, and opens brand new sodium channels. Just like that, the electrical wave is reborn on the other side. But wait, we have a huge problem to solve. If that acetylcholine just sits there, locked onto the receptor, sodium will keep pouring in, and that new neuron will fire endlessly, which leads to things like muscle spasms or seizures. To stop that, a highly efficient cleanup enzyme called acetylcholinesterase swoops in. It rapidly chops the acetylcholine into two inactive pieces, choline and acetate. They pop off the receptor, the signal stops, and the pieces drift back to the first neuron to be recycled. It's a perfectly self-cleaning system. Which brings us to our final stop, section 5, controlling the signals. Our signal crossed the gap and got safely shut off. But how does your body manage and integrate the trillions of microscopic messages firing at any given second?
You see, synapses aren't just empty spaces. They are absolutely crucial biological checkpoints. First, they guarantee unidirectionality. Because the chemical messenger is only made on one side and the receptors are only on the other, the signal can literally only flow forward, never backward. They also act as filters, blocking out low-level background noise so we don't get overloaded. Plus, they handle integration, combining multiple tiny inputs from all around the body into one clear, cohesive response.
A huge part of that integration is summation, which is basically a biological voting system to hit that -55 millivolt threshold. There are too many ways to do this. First, we have spatial summation. This is where multiple different presynaptic neurons all chime in at the exact same time, releasing a little neurotransmitter to trigger the next neuron. Second is temporal summation. This relies on just one single neuron shouting really fast, firing in extremely quick succession to build up enough chemical to cross the threshold. Two completely different strategies, exact same goal. So as we wrap up this explainer, we've traced this incredible journey from a simple physical push on your skin to an electrical wave across a chemical river and into a highly coordinated network. I want to leave you with this. If every sensation, every thought, and every single movement you experience is just a fleeting, delicate balance of sodium, potassium, and enzymes, what exactly happens to our perception of reality when this perfectly balanced electrochemical system gets interrupted or goes into overdrive? It's definitely something fascinating to think about. Thanks so much for joining me to explore the microscopic electricity that makes us who we are.